The slavers never saw it coming. The heavy thud of boots against dirt echoed across the quiet fields of the small farm. Alara wiped the sweat from her brow, unaware of the distant shadow slowly descending from the sky above her. The hum of machinery filled the air as she worked the crops, her hands moving with practiced ease. She was used to hard work, the long hours, and the solitude. Her mother, Mari, a quiet figure who rarely spoke of her past, was all Alara needed. But today, everything was about to change. The ship arrived with little warning, a sleek, dark silhouette against the pale sky. At first, Alara thought it was just another stray cargo ship, lost and off course. But then the doors opened, and men in armor stormed down, weapons raised. They moved with precision, their eyes scanning the land for their prize. Alara Varro, the lead slaver, shouted, voice booming, "You're coming with us?" Alara froze, heart hammering in her chest. The name that shouldn't have mattered. Her family had kept their heads down for years, lived a life of peace, far away from the conflict of the galaxy. But here they were, her name spoken in a way that made her blood run cold. The slavers had come to take her. "Mom!" Alara shouted, but it was too late. From the shadows of the farmhouse, Mari emerged. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as if the violence she had once known was still just beneath the surface, waiting to be awakened. The slavers stopped, recognizing her immediately. "Move her out," the lead slaver barked, not bothering to acknowledge Mari. "She's our prize." Mari's gaze remained fixed on the men, unblinking. "Touch her," she said softly, "and I will make you regret it." Alara's mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. Her mother, so quiet, so calm, was an enigma to her. She'd grown up knowing little about Mari's past, only that it was a life she had left behind. But these men? They knew something Alara didn't. Before the slavers could move, Mari acted. It wasn't a roar of rage or a sudden charge. It was an almost eerie calm, the precision of someone who had done this countless times before. In one smooth motion, she drew a weapon from her belt, the silence blaster taking out the nearest slaver with a single shot. The remaining men hesitated, but it was too late. Mari was already in motion, her movements fluid, almost graceful, as she took down another attacker. Alara stood frozen, a mix of fear and awe gripping her. She had seen her mother defend their farm from wild animals, from storms, from natural disasters. But this was something else entirely. "What? Who are you?" one of the slavers stammered, confusion flickering in his eyes. Mari's response was simple, her voice calm as she leveled the blaster at his chest. "I'm someone you should have never crossed." Before the slaver could react, Mari took him down with a shot that silenced the battlefield. The remaining two men looked at each other, fear spreading across their faces. They'd come for a farm girl. They hadn't counted on her mother, someone who wasn't just a retired farm woman, but a force in her own right. The slavers, now disoriented and stunned by the swift carnage, quickly regrouped. "Call for reinforcements," the leader growled, retreating with his men. Mari didn't chase them. Instead, she turned toward Alara, her face unreadable. "Go inside. Lock the door. Now." Alara stood there, still processing the sight before her, her heart pounding with the realization that her mother's past had just come crashing into her present. "Mom," Alara said, voice trembling. What was that? Who were they?" Mari turned, the cold, deadly calm still in her eyes. "They're slavers, Alara. And your life is no longer the same." Alara's mind raced, and for the first time, she wondered what kind of woman her mother truly was, and whether they could survive whatever came next. But as Mari glanced toward the sky, Alara knew one thing. The slavers weren't done. And neither was her mother. The slavers never knew what hit them. Mari's hands were steady as she wiped the blood from her blaster. It wasn't the first time she'd killed, and it wouldn't be the last. But for the first time in years, her past had come roaring back, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. She had hoped to leave that life behind. She'd kept Alara safe, raised her away from the bloodshed and violence that had once defined her every waking moment. But today, the past had come calling. Alara stood frozen by the farmhouse door, eyes wide, mouth slightly agape. Her mother, the woman she thought she knew, had just slaughtered for armed men with cold precision. "What the hell just happened, Mom?" Alara demanded, voice trembling. Mari turned slowly, her gaze hardening, as if steeling herself for the inevitable. "I told you to go inside." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, an urgency that Alara didn't understand. "They're coming back," Alara said, glancing at the wreckage, at the bodies now lying scattered across the dusty earth. Mari nodded. "They'll be back. They'll send more, but this time they'll be ready for me. They won't expect you." Alara's mind was spinning, but there was no time for questions. Mari moved to the barn, her movements sharp and purposeful. "Get to the ship. I'll cover you." Alara hesitated. She wanted to ask so many things: who those men were, why they had come, and most importantly, who her mother really was. But there was no time for that now. She had seen enough to know that the woman standing in front of her wasn't just her mother. She was something much darker, someone who had done things Alara could barely fathom. "Mom, what's going on? You're not just some retired farm woman, are you?" Alara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mari stopped, her back to Alara, as she examined a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. "No, I'm not. And you don't want to know the details. Just trust me." Trust her. Alara had trusted her mother her whole life, but now that trust was a fragile thing, splintering under the weight of revelations she hadn't been ready for. Mari opened the compartment and revealed what had been hidden for so many years: an array of weapons, sleek and deadly. "Get your things. We're leaving." The gravity of the situation was dawning on Alara. She had lived a life of peace, unaware of the storm that had been brewing just beneath the surface. She wanted to fight back, but she knew that her mother, not her, was the one who could protect them. Mari worked quickly, dismantling her farm tools and replacing them with combat gear. Alara could hardly believe it. Her mother, the woman who had taught her to tend crops and fix machines, was the same woman who could kill without hesitation. "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" Alara asked, her voice small. Mari paused, turning to face her daughter. The hardness in her eyes softened, just for a moment. "I wanted you to have a chance at a normal life. You're not like me, Alara. I never wanted you to become like me. But now we have to run," Alara replied, frustration and fear rising. "We can't just hide forever. They'll keep coming." Mari's expression hardened again. "We won't hide forever. But first we get out of here. They'll think we're gone, and then we'll make our move." Alara nodded, though her mind raced with the hundreds of questions she still had. She hadn't even begun to understand the depth of her mother's past. As they made their way toward the small ship hidden in the fields, Alara saw her mother's shoulders tense. The slavers weren't the only threat. They weren't the only ones who knew Mari's name. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Alara glanced at the farm one last time. It had been her home, a peaceful, quiet existence. But peace was a luxury they could no longer afford. "We're not safe here anymore," Mari said, as they lifted off from the ground. "Not with your name out there." Alara turned to face her mother, realization dawning in her eyes. "What name?" Mari's lips curled into a grim smile. "The name they've been hunting for." And as the farm grew smaller in the distance, Alara knew this was just the beginning of a journey she was never prepared for. The past had finally caught up with them. Mari's hands gripped the controls of their small ship, her face tense, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Alara sat beside her, silent and pale, the weight of their escape pressing on her chest. Her world had just been turned upside down. Her mother, the quiet farmer, was now someone she barely recognized. Every step of the way, Alara had wondered what secrets lay buried in Mari's past. But now, there was no room for questions. There was only survival. "We'll stop at the next station," Mari said, her voice tight. "We need supplies, and we need to lay low for a while." Alara nodded, her mind still reeling. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years. I thought you were just a normal mom." Mari's jaw clenched, and for a moment, she didn't answer. Alara watched the stars flicker by, feeling a gnawing emptiness. She had always known her mother had a past. Every person who came to the farm, every small sign that people knew more than they let on, was a whisper of something darker, something more dangerous. But hearing it from Mari's own lips was different. The truth was too raw, too real. "They'll come after us, you know," Alara said, voice barely a whisper. Mari's grip tightened on the controls. "I know." The ship shuddered slightly as they passed into the outer rim of the galaxy, an uncharted and largely ignored sector. It was quiet here, no law enforcement, no galactic reach, no quick way for anyone to track them. The perfect place to hide. But hiding would never be enough. "We'll be safe for now," Mari said, her voice betraying nothing as always. "But you need to understand something. You're not just running away from them. You're running from everything I used to be." Alara's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "What do you mean?" Mari turned to her, her eyes dark with the weight of years of regret. "I wasn't just a farmer, Alara. I was an assassin, a deadly one. You don't retire from that life. You only walk away until it finds you." Alara blinked, her mind struggling to process the words. "An assassin? You killed people? You were a monster." Mari didn't flinch, but her face softened. "I did what I had to do. I was good at it. Too good. But I walked away. For you. I thought I could leave all that behind and give you a life where you never had to know that side of me." Alara's breath caught in her throat. "And now they're after us because of that life. They want me because of what you did." Mari nodded, her eyes distant. "They want you because they want everything. And they know that I won't stop until I've killed every last one of them." A silence settled between them. Alara's mind raced. Her mother, this calm, strong, yet frightening woman, had been a killer. A shadow in a world full of light. And now that shadow was hunting them both. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alara asked again, voice barely above a whisper. Mari took a long breath, her gaze fixed ahead, as if the stars could offer some kind of answer. "Because I wanted you to have a life, Alara. I wanted you to be free. But freedom doesn't exist when your past keeps coming back to haunt you. They won't stop, not until they've got what they came for." A flicker of something dark passed across Mari's face. Alara felt her stomach drop. Her mother was a weapon that, once unleashed, would not stop until everything in its path was destroyed. "Alara," Mari said, turning back to her, "you need to understand. If they catch us, they'll take everything. They'll use you to draw me out." A shiver ran down Alara's spine. "What happens then?" Mari's eyes hardened. "Then I kill every last one of them, no matter who they are." Alara swallowed hard, fear creeping into her bones. She had always admired her mother's strength, her calmness in the face of danger. But now, with the full weight of her past coming into view, Alara realized that strength came at a cost that was too high to bear. "What do we do now?" Alara asked, her voice quiet. "We prepare," Mari said. "We get ready for the storm that's coming. And we fight." Alara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of it all. Her mother's past was a storm, and now it was their only way forward. The storm was coming, and Alara could feel the first drops of danger in the air. They had barely made it to the supply station before the first wave of slavers tracked them down. Mari's past had caught up with them faster than they could have ever imagined. The quiet, desolate station was supposed to be a safe haven, a place to regroup and plan their next move. But now it felt like a trap. Alara had watched her mother's calm facade crack for the first time. The moment they docked, Mari immediately went to work. scanning the station's records for any signs of the slavers' presence. Alara knew better than to ask questions now. She had learned enough to know that Mari's methods were quiet, efficient, and deadly. But there was something about the tension in her mother's movements that made Alara's skin crawl. "We need to move," Mari said abruptly, as she gathered their supplies, her voice colder than usual. "The slavers won't stop looking. We'll have to leave sooner than I thought." Alara swallowed hard, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. She had been running with Mari for days, dodging attacks, never really knowing how close they were to the edge. But now, she could see it. They were cornered. "Mom, we can't just keep running," Alara said, her voice shaky. "What's the plan? Are we just going to keep running from them forever?" Mari's eyes hardened as she locked the compartment of their ship. "No, Alara. We don't run. We fight." Alara stared at her, confused. "Fight? How? We're outnumbered. They have the entire galaxy behind them." Mari's lips curled into a grim smile. "We don't need the galaxy behind us. We need one thing, one weapon. And I know exactly where to find it." Mari's past was catching up to her in more ways than one, but she wasn't afraid. She had spent years hiding the very skills that made her legendary. The life she had abandoned was still alive inside her, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Alara followed her mother through the narrow, dimly lit corridors of the station, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what weapon Mari was referring to, but she had seen the power in her mother's eyes. She wasn't talking about some ordinary weapon. She was talking about something far more dangerous. Something from her past. They entered an old, forgotten storage room at the edge of the station. Dust covered the crates and equipment scattered about, but Mari didn't hesitate. She moved straight to the back of the room, where a hidden compartment lay concealed. Alara watched in silence as Mari expertly worked the mechanism, revealing a weapon Alara had only ever heard of in whispers. It was a sleek, compact gun, one of Mari's custom-made designs. A relic of her days as an assassin, capable of firing silent projectiles with deadly accuracy. But it wasn't just the weapon that shocked Alara. It was the way Mari's hands shook, just slightly, as she retrieved it. "Mom, you kept this hidden?" Alara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mari didn't answer at first. Instead, she carefully checked the weapon, making sure it was loaded and ready. When she finally looked at Alara, there was no trace of hesitation in her eyes. "We don't have a choice," Mari said. "I retired once. But not today. Today, I'm not just your mother. I'm the one who will make sure we get out of this alive." Alara felt a lump in her throat. This wasn't the woman who raised her. This was something darker, something she had never understood, but was now forced to face. Mari's voice softened, almost as if she were trying to reassure herself. "We can do this. I've fought harder battles than this. And we're going to win." Alara watched her mother load the weapon, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The woman she had known, the one who had nurtured and protected her, had disappeared into the assassin she once was. "Are you ready?" Mari asked. Alara nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was ready. She wasn't sure if anyone ever could be. The past had returned, and now there was no escaping it. As they moved back to the ship, Alara felt the weight of the weapon her mother held, a reminder of the deadly storm they were about to face. And for the first time, she realized this fight was no longer just about surviving. It was about confronting the ghosts of the past and using them to secure their future. The storm was coming, and they were ready. Mari's past had finally come alive, and it was not just hunting them. It was closing in fast. The ship's engines hummed softly as they made their way through the dark expanse of space, but the tension inside the small cockpit was unbearable. Mari's knuckles were white as she gripped the controls, her eyes scanning the galaxy beyond them for any signs of the slavers. Alara sat beside her, her heart racing, unsure of how much longer they could keep running. "We won't be able to stay ahead of them much longer," Alara said quietly, her voice heavy with the weight of the truth. They are getting smarter. They're learning our moves. Mari didn't respond immediately. Her focus was locked on the navigation console, fingers moving swiftly as she plotted their next jump. She had been preparing for this for years, but now that the moment had come, a part of her wasn't sure how it would end. "They've underestimated us for too long," Mari said, her voice calm, but there was a dangerous edge to it. "It ends tonight." Alara looked at her mother, the woman she had always admired, and now, for the first time, she saw the warrior behind the calm. The same woman who had killed without hesitation, the same woman who had kept her past buried, was finally stepping back into a life she had left behind. And Alara could feel the weight of it. They were no longer running. They were preparing to fight. The slavers had called for reinforcements, and now they were closing in on them faster than ever. Mari's plan was risky, perhaps too risky, but it was the only option left. She wasn't going to run anymore. Not after everything they had been through. She would make sure this was the end of it. "We'll make the jump to the Chronos system," Mari said, breaking the silence. "There's an old contact there who can help us." Alara's brow furrowed. "You have a contact? How do you even know?" Mari cut her off, her gaze sharp. "Because I made sure I had options. Now get ready." Alara didn't argue. She had seen enough to understand that when her mother spoke, it wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. They were about to make a move that would either ensure their survival or seal their fate. As the ship prepared for its jump, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that this would be their last chance. Either they would succeed or they would be caught. She didn't know if she could handle another fight, but she knew one thing for sure. Her mother was ready to fight to the death, and Alara had no choice but to follow. The ship lurched as they entered the wormhole, the stars outside streaking into blurry lines. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then, with a sudden burst of light, they emerged into the Chronos system. The space station they were looking for was close, a small, decrepit outpost far from any major galactic trade routes. It was the perfect place to hide, but it was also a place full of dangers, old debts, mercenaries, and even more people who had their eyes on Alara's mother. As Mari guided the ship toward the station, Alara felt the weight of the situation sink in. They weren't just escaping anymore, they were setting a trap. Mari turned to her daughter. "This is it. Stay close. We don't trust anyone here." The ship's landing gear extended as they touched down, the screeching metal echoing in the quiet of space. The door slid open, and Mari stepped out, blaster in hand, every inch of her body alert. Alara followed, but her steps were slower, hesitant. This was no longer a world she recognized. "Stay behind me," Mari ordered, her voice low. "Don't speak unless I tell you to." The station was grimy, a collection of old tech and shady characters. As they walked through the halls, Alara couldn't help but feel exposed. There was danger lurking in every shadow, every crevice. This wasn't a place for the weak. This was a place for those who had nowhere else to go. Mari's contact, a man named Ven, was waiting for them in a corner booth of a dimly lit bar. His eyes narrowed as they approached, his gaze flickering over Mari with a mixture of respect and caution. He knew her reputation, and it was clear from the moment he saw her that he was taking no chances. "You're late," Ven said, his voice low. Mari didn't flinch. "We've had complications." Ven glanced at Alara, sizing her up. "She's the reason you're here, isn't she?" "The slavers." Mari's jaw tightened. "They won't stop. We need help." Ven leaned back in his chair, his eyes calculating. "And what makes you think I'll help you, Mari? The galaxy's a dangerous place, and so are you." Mari's expression didn't change. "You'll help us, Ven, because I've killed for you before. And because you owe me." Ven's eyes flickered with a brief flash of recognition before he sighed, defeated. "All right, I'll get you the gear you need. But after this, you're on your own." Mari nodded. "I don't need anything else." As Ven went to prepare their equipment, Alara's eyes met her mother's. She didn't fully understand everything, but one thing was certain. The game had changed. They were no longer running. This was the beginning of a fight they would finish, no matter what it took. The final battle was upon them, and this time there would be no escape. Alara stood at the entrance of the station's hangar, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. The plan had been simple enough. Arm themselves, hit the slavers' supply depot, and get the hell out before reinforcements could arrive. But nothing about their situation was simple anymore. The slavers had called in every favor, every contact, and now they were ready. This would be the last stand. Mari moved past her daughter, without a word, her eyes focused, her steps deliberate. The assassin in her had returned completely, the once familiar farm woman now gone. Alara felt the pull of her mother's confidence, but was unsure if she could follow in her footsteps. She wasn't made for this. She wasn't like her mother. "Mom," Alara called out, her voice tight with nerves. Mari paused, her back still to Alara, before turning slowly. "We're doing this now, Alara. We finish it." Alara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She wanted to argue, to beg her mother to leave it all behind, to run, to hide. But deep down, she knew this was their only shot at survival. The slavers would stop at nothing to finish what they'd started, and Mari would never stop until they were all dead. Together, they made their way toward the depot, a cold determination in their steps. The sound of their boots echoed in the metal corridors, punctuated only by the hum of the station's lights. Alara tried to keep her mind from racing, focusing instead on the task ahead. The weapons in her hands felt foreign, heavy and unnatural, but Mari had insisted. If she was going to survive, she needed to learn how to fight. "Stay close," Mari ordered, her voice clipped. They reached the edge of the depot, where the faint sounds of slaver voices could be heard in the distance. Alara's heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't some training exercise. This was real, and in a moment it would all be out of their hands. Mari turned to face her daughter. "When we go in, we don't stop. We don't hesitate. You stay behind me unless I say otherwise." Alara nodded, gripping the weapon tighter. She wanted to speak, to say something that would make it all feel less surreal. But there was no time for words. She wasn't just a farm girl anymore. She was her mother's daughter. And she had to fight. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and they slipped inside. The depot was a large, industrial room lined with crates and weapons caches. A few slavers moved about, oblivious to their presence. Mari was the first to act, stepping into the shadows, the deadly precision of her movements turning the quiet into a deadly storm. In the span of a few seconds, Mari had incapacitated the first guard with a swift blow to the neck. Alara followed, more out of instinct than training, and fired her weapon, taking down another guard. Her hands shook, but her aim was true. She didn't have the luxury of fear. "Keep moving," Mari commanded as she advanced, methodical and efficient. There, regrouping, the air was thick with the scent of metal and sweat, the tension rising as the remaining slavers turned toward them. The sounds of weapons charging filled the space, and Alara's heart skipped a beat. This was it. There was no turning back now. Mari moved like a ghost, her every step calculated, her every motion lethal. Alara, following her example, fired again, taking down another slaver. They made their way through the depot, each step bringing them closer to their goal, and to the growing realization that this wouldn't be as simple as they had hoped. As the last of the slavers fell, Alara's breath came in ragged bursts. Her hands were slick with sweat, her body trembling with adrenaline. The depot was silent now, save for the hum of the station's machinery. They had done it, but they weren't safe, not yet. Mari turned to her, her expression hard but approving. "We're not done yet. Let's move." They headed for the exit, the sound of approaching footsteps making Alara's pulse spike again. The reinforcements were almost there. The slavers would never let them escape without a fight. But as Alara looked at her mother, she saw a glimmer of something, an old fire, the one that had made Mari one of the deadliest assassins in the galaxy. And she knew without a doubt that no matter what happened next, they wouldn't stop until the slavers were dead and their lives, their future, was theirs once again. Mari's hand rested briefly on Alara's shoulder as they moved toward the ship. "This is the last fight, Alara. After this we live?" Alara didn't know if she believed it, but she knew one thing for certain. She had become her mother's daughter. And this fight was far from over.